morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of Coast to Coast College Football Pregame Show. I'm one of your hosts, Bill Shawcross. You can call me Uncle Shally. We have a jam-packed show today. A lot to get through. Not going to be a crazy long opening. We got game recaps. We have a lot of movement in the College Football Eliminator. A lot to talk about there. We're going to do our quarter season Heisman update list watch. We're going to update that. A lot of movement there as well. We got to talk about the Mel Tucker situation in Michigan State. Officially been fired. Who are the top candidates to replace him? Of course, we got game previews for not next week, for later on today. And then, of course, pick 'em. So before we get into it, introduce you to the two guys that help me run this shit. First, my Buckeye brother from another mother, Mr. Cottrell Simpson. How you doing this morning?
I'm all right, man. It'd be better, if we had some Ohio State football on today, but, I'll take the football that I can get.
Well, Ryan Day is still yelling at Lou Holtz, so he needs to take a week off. He got put in timeout, so they're not going to play this week. But they will be back next week. Who do you guys have next week?
It beats me.
It's nobody good then. And then, as always, last but certainly not least, some people might say he's our Pat McAfee. Not sure. Kind of like it, though. But he's our West Coast man, Mr. iBlack, Alex Elmore. How you feeling, buddy? It's early out there.
It's good, man. Yeah, I will take the Pat McAfee compliment. All right, that man is on ESPN right now, and that's where we're headed. No, man, I'm excited. Today's my son's 11th birthday, so it's already started off to a great day. And now we're going to get into some college football stuff, and then we'll get to go enjoy the rest of the day and watch some football. So it's going to be a good Saturday.
Well, happy birthday to little Elmore then.
Facts.
Thank you, sir.
But we got to jump right into it because we got less than 2 hours to kick now, and we got a lot to go through and a lot of information to get you guys. So here we go. We're going to start writing recaps from last week. We're going to start with UCLA at Oregon. Low-scoring game. Lower scoring than I think a lot of people expected. I don't think anybody thought this game was going to be in the 30s, but 14-7. Kind of a defensive battle. I would say Dante Moore, first game where he kind of really looked like a true freshman. Nate Johnson kind of did what he's been doing, managing the game, not turning the ball over, keeping Utah in it, letting their defense do their thing. Utah comes out with a big win against a big program, 14-7. What do you guys think?
I mean, for me, I think this game was one that I really wasn't expecting to go like this. Obviously, Utah, they play well, and the strength of that team right now is definitely their defense, with Cam Rising being out. But I wasn't expecting Dante Moore to struggle as much as he did. Now, obviously, Utah is a tough place to play. That's definitely his toughest test so far during his young career. But I wasn't expecting him to necessarily look like that. And, we're going to talk more into it because we'll get into Utah's game from last night. But this was a game where I ultimately thought UCLA was going to win because, I thought the clock was going to eventually strike midnight for that Utah team and just not having the offense to put up points on the board. And you saw it in this game as well. It kind of was that way. They did have a defensive touchdown, so that was ultimately one of their touchdowns. But I was definitely expecting more from that UCLA offense. If clearly you can see it with the score, but if Dante Moore puts up 2 touchdowns, leads 3 scoring drives, they win that football game. And I was expecting him to do that. They looked dominant, to start the year, but you got to give all the credit in the world to that Utah defense. I mean, they've held their own so far without Cam Rising, and I can't wait to see what they look like once Cam Rising is back. I'll say that.
Alex?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely Cam Rising is definitely a huge difference maker on that Utah team. The game itself against Utah and UCLA had 24 total first downs in 4 quarters. It was definitely a defensive battle. I mean, Dante Moore threw for under 50%, and the UCLA team averages 205 yards per game on the ground. Only managed to get 9 yards on the ground against that Utah defense. As you can see on there, Jonah Ellis with 10 tackles, 3.5 sacks. Dude is on a tear this year with 5 tackles for loss. Utah's main issue is Nate Johnson. If you watched the game last night against Oregon State, you probably have the same exact opinion that Cam Rising is the difference maker on that Utah team, and that defense can only take you so far, especially if you're only able to score 14 points against UCLA. Obviously, their defense did fantastic, keeping Dante Moore in check. But I know we got more to talk about with Utah, so let's keep it going. Bill, what do you think?
No, I agree with both you guys. I mean, I think this is a typical kind of Utah game and kind of how they have to win games right now until Cam Rising can come back. And I agree with Cottrell as well. I kind of want to see him back because I feel like there's more to this offense, and they're kind of playing in a very basic package right now with a very basic playbook. I just I think Nate Johnson, listen, to kind of getting put into a really tough spot, and I think they led a lot of people to believe that Cam Rising was going to be back at the beginning of the year. He's done a good job. He's a guy who was probably a year away from realistically playing, and he got them to 4-0. I think you have to tip your cap to the kid, and he came in and did a good job. I just don't think he's there yet to where he's running the full offense, and eventually you're just going to play a team where that's going to catch up to you, and you're going to have to score points, and it could be a little bit of a doomsday to Utah. So we will segue that into Utah played Oregon State last night. Went up to Corvallis. Kind of what we all just talked about kind of happened. It's kind of a little bit of a cheat into the segue, but if you watched the game last night, it's a pretty good game. Another, I would say, lower scoring game than I thought it was going to be. I didn't think it was going to be a game where it was going to be 33-30, but Oregon State had a couple flashes, had a couple big plays. DJ didn't play great. I think he played good enough to win. They ran the ball pretty well. Utah's offense just really sputtered out last night. They lost 21-7 at Oregon State. No Cam Rising again. Nate Johnson struggled pretty bad last night. I think he was like 8 for 23 or something like that. I mean, he's completing like 30% of his passes. Didn't look great. Utah finally falls to Oregon State. We said it all year. Corvallis, not an easy place to play whatsoever. Not a huge stadium, very loud. Fans are right on top of you. And finally caught up to Utah. No Cam Rising. Not sure where they go from here. What did you guys think of the game last night?
For me, I just think that the biggest thing was, obviously Nate Johnson didn't play well last night, but to an extent, I mean, it wasn't his fault. He was back there running for his life. It seemed like every play. The Utah offensive line did not hold up at all. And, as much as Nate Johnson struggled, you saw that their backup quarterback come in, struggled as well. And then he got hurt because the Utah line couldn't protect him. And so they had to throw Nate Johnson back out there. And, he was playing hurt too. So, I mean, I think that the biggest thing with Nate Johnson is that he's not going to be the guy to kill you with his arm, at least not yet. And, you kind of saw that in that game with Oregon State, obviously, with the turnovers there. And you could tell that Oregon State was really saying, we're going to send the house at you pretty much every play. We want you to either escape or stay in the pocket and make a play. And they just knew Nate Johnson wasn't going to be capable of doing that. So you mentioned DJ didn't play great. He didn't, but he did enough. And so, you got to give credit to that Oregon State team. Utah now has a loss. Obviously, your heavy hitters and who everybody was expecting to be, the top dogs in this conference are still undefeated. But by getting this win over Utah, that's a huge win for Oregon State. And they're still in the mix to, potentially compete for a Pac-12 championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are. But if Cam Rising doesn't come back soon, Utah's season is going to be over within the next couple of weeks, in my honest opinion. There's two common factors in Utah's games. When they face good defenses, they can't run the ball. Yesterday against Oregon State, they only had 56 yards on the ground. Their average for the season is 143. Also, against Florida, granted, I know that they beat Florida pretty handedly, but that is probably one of the better defenses that they have played this year. And against that Florida defense, they only had, I think 85 rushing yards for that game. Let me just double check all my stats here. Okay, they had 105 yards rushing, but average under 4 yards a carry. So when they struggle on the ground and they have to rely on the quarterback play without Cam Rising, it's bad news for Utah. Their defense is fantastic, but like I said, if you go up against a team like Oregon State, they can control the ball, run the ball, control the clock. It's not going to spell good news for your offense.
Agreed. I mean, they have a longer week off now. I really hope we see him next week. I don't know. I didn't look ahead. I don't know who Utah has, so I don't know if it's another game where they think they could skate by or.
They got California next week. Oh yeah, they have a bye. Sorry,
I was going to say I thought Utah was heading into a bye, and I think they're going to probably try and bring Cam back after the bye, which was probably the plan all along. But
agreed.
Of course, they didn't want to express that.
Well, they definitely need to, because with California coming off their break, right after that they got USC and Oregon. So you're definitely going to need some sort of offensive difference to come out of that locker room if they're going to keep up with those two offenses.
And I think that's like the perfect bring back game for Cam Rising.
I agree. It's a good game for him to come back and get some reps and then be sharp for USC, because that's going to be their season. So, Cottrell, I'm going to let you pick. Where are we going next?
So, I mean, briefly, we can cover because, we're going to give Washington State their love, just a little teaser, later on in the show. But, let's just quickly go over Washington State, Oregon State, because, Washington State they're still undefeated.
They are. So, Pullman, not again. It's a sneaky, tough place to go play. Oregon State. This was more of a game that I thought, we got exactly what we thought we were going to get, if I was being honest. 38-35, kind of a shootout, a lot of offense, a lot of just airing the ball out, and, it was an exciting game. Cam Ward is balling. That's all I can say. I don't know how else to put it. You're probably going to hear his name quite a bit in, one of our upcoming segments, just, a little tease there. DJ, again, not great, not bad. Probably did enough to win. They ran the ball real well. Washington State came out on top. They had the one extra possession that they got, and they took advantage of it. They're undefeated, and again, the later in the season we get, it's a team that you're not going to want to travel to go play with your back against the wall type thing. Cam Ward has that offense flying up and down the field. They're not playing great defense. They're kind of in the bend but don't break, characterization for defenses. I watched a decent amount of this game, so all I can say, I mean, Cam Ward, that is the thing that stuck out to me. Cam Ward was very, very impressive. What did you guys see? What did you take away from the game?
Yeah, for me, I really liked how Oregon State, even though they were down big early, they still stuck to their game plan of keeping the ball on the ground. I mean, they were averaging 6.2 yards per carry. Obviously, DJ wasn't having the best game of his life, but he was doing what he needed to keep him in the game, making some big throws, especially there in the fourth quarter. I really like that Deshaun Fenwick came out of nowhere. Obviously, we're kind of, before the game started, we all kind of had our eyes on Martinez and kind of what he was going to do as far as the run game goes. And even though he did average 4.8 yards per carry, it was nice seeing Deshaun Fenwick to get in the action, with 9.2 yards, per carry, also 3 touchdowns. He really helped him keep him in that game. The one crazy statistic to me, and that worries me about that Oregon State defense, is that Washington State only had to go through third down 9 times in the game, converting 5 of them. They had 27 first downs in the game, but only 9 third downs. That tells me they're getting a lot of large chunk plays at the beginning of each drive, and Oregon State was not able to keep them on third and short, and you could tell that by the high completion percentage of 5 for 9 on third downs. But in that fourth quarter, Washington State, their defense definitely was breaking, not bending, because they gave up 3 straight touchdown drives of over 75 yards, including the Oregon State's last drive was 98 yards to get the game within 3 points. Oregon State's offense is looking fantastic. It took them a little bit longer to kind of catch on away at Washington State and Pullman, but once they did turn on the Jets, they were really making the Washington State defense look silly. Obviously, Cam Ward, we're going to have some time to talk about him later. 404 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. Dude is unreal this year, and I can't wait to get into talking about him a little bit later.
I will say, for me, just real quick, this game showed me that we had brought up Cameron Ward earlier in the season. I know we've talked about that Washington State team in the past and just what they've been doing so far in the Pac-12. To me, I think the biggest thing was that Cam Ward was out there, and you saw it every time that he stepped back on the field. No matter what Oregon State was doing, he went out there and did exactly what he had to do because he wasn't going to lose that game. And so got to give all the credit in the world to Karen Ward. I'm glad that, he's now a name that is, on the map, and folks are starting to realize that Washington State team is serious this year. And I know we talked about it. We talked about it last week and even a little bit on Wire to Wire. It is such a travesty that this game wasn't at 10 p.m. Like, you had so many eyes that could have been on Cam Ward and DJ in this game, but everybody was tuned in watching Notre Dame and Ohio State play because they were going directly head to head. So I'm just glad. Hopefully soon, Washington State's gonna, they still got some big games left on their schedule, but Cam Ward's name is now definitely on the map.
I think I think Oregon State, we knew was going to be a sneaky good team, especially with DJ transferring in. I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to give Cottrell his credit here because I think Cottrell talked about Cam Ward more than anybody else that I heard on any platform, and I mean that I mean the national ones, regional, anything like Cam. I heard Cam Ward's name out of Cottrell's mouth more than anybody else. I think it's just becoming increasingly more unlikely that anybody runs the table in the Pac-12. And I don't mean that any kind of disrespect, Alex. I just think it's, if it was just Oregon, Washington, and USC, I think there's a chance one of those teams beats the other two. But even after that, these teams got to go to Utah. Oregon State's in the mix. Washington State's in the mix. Arizona State aren't great by any means, but both their offenses put up a lot of points. You play them on the wrong night where they're super hot, you could lose there. Cal and Stanford obviously stink, but
you gotta find a way to stop Colorado from scoring. You can run over them, but
you got Colorado, but it's, I mean, we'll do that. We won't do that game next, but we're going to get to that game too. The same thing though. Like, if you don't have a dominant defense, they're going to put up points. Like, you're getting into a shootout with them most likely. I think it's a lot to ask for kids to be, on their A game for 8 weeks in a row. And some of these teams might have to do that. So I will say this though, we talked about it on Wire to Wire, but it's, if you get through the Pac-12 with only one loss and you're a conference champion, you're going to go to the college football playoff. The resumes are just going to be too good. But let's not harp on that much too long because we're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. So let's we'll go where we go next, Cottrell. You're in charge of this train right now. Alabama Ole Miss. This game stunk. I'm just going to be honest with you. It was not. It was not exciting. This ended up being Alabama's and then being Nick Saban coming up with a good game plan and doing what he needed to do to get a win against a ranked team at home. And this was Ole Miss going into a big game and Lane Kiffin and company laying another pile of doo-doo. Jackson Dart, I think his numbers probably even make him look like he played better than he did. Missed a bunch of big throws at big times to get first downs or continue drives. They had every shot to still win this game going into the fourth quarter, and Ole Miss just dropped the ball time after time after time. Jalen Milroe, decent game. I think he looked a little bit better. I think he looked a little bit more comfortable playing within the system, maybe, if you want to say that, if you want to go out on that limb. And McClellan had a great game on the ground, and I think that's what they're going to try to really get back to. Get a running game, take a lot of pressure off Milroe. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Alabama, big home win against a ranked team, helps them stay somewhat alive, going forward, live to see another week. Ole Miss making a move in a couple minutes. And I don't know. What do you got? What do you guys got? This game disappointed to me.
Let me get this out of the way because I am super upset right now. All right. I have been high on Ole Miss all season.
That's
Jackson
true.
Dart,
my darling. Ole Miss is your baby.
All right. Man, I don't even know what to say right now. Yes, the game was honestly, it was a really good game. First half, 7-6. Ole Miss was up. I did anticipate Ole Miss coming out in the second half and running the ball with Judkins a lot more than they did. I mean, I don't get how you can have your best offensive weapon only carry the ball 13 times in a game, especially when you're up at halftime against Alabama that's going to try to control the clock and run the ball down your throat. It was pretty obvious that was their game plan from the first whistle, that Alabama was going to beat you on the ground. And Ole Miss did not try to compete with controlling the clock, moving the ball. They just continued to try to throw the ball. And Jackson Dart didn't throw one touchdown pass, only averaged 7 yards per completion. I'm honestly extremely disappointed, and it's going to be really sad for me when you move Ole Miss from the contenders to the pretenders.
Yeah, I mean, this game, I will say the one thing that kind of surprised me in this one is that obviously with this being, Jalen Milroe's first game really back, under center for that team after getting benched, he came out and I will say he looked good. Like, obviously he had turnover, but outside of that, like he actually looked pretty good in this game. He wasn't throwing the ball downfield and, taking the top off that Ole Miss defense, but he was playing mistake-free football, and that's what you want to see out of him. If he does that and he's not trying to force things, with the way that the Alabama defense plays, this isn't one of the all-time defenses at Bama, but they are still good enough to hold teams to less than 20 points. And so if you find a way to, be successful in the run game and just have Jalen Milroe not turn the ball over, I think that can be a recipe of, I'm not going to say success, but it could be a recipe for survival for that Alabama team right now that I think is, really going to struggle to win the SEC West. But if they keep up that game plan with Milroe just taking it easy and then running the ball, I think, they can find ways to beat teams that I probably wouldn't have picked them to beat before the season started.
And Bill, before you go there, I'm still nervous about this Alabama team. Obviously, they seem to have found their identity a little bit with that running game, but it still makes me a little nervous, the fact that they only trusted Miller to throw the ball 21 times, especially down after the first half. They ran the ball 45 versus 21 pass attempts. That is not a recipe. Go ahead, Bill.
It's not, but at the same time, it's kind of what Nick Saban has always wanted to do. It's just he's the last 4 or 5 years, he's just had quarterbacks that were a little bit more competent and further along, and he's had just top 10 pick after top 10 pick at wide receiver outside. So they've kind of thrown the ball more. To Cottrell's point, like this game plan, the style that they're going to play, they continue to bring Milroe along. It's going to keep them afloat in the SEC West. It's going to give them a chance to continue to get better throughout the year, and then maybe make the Hail Mary chance of trying to beat, they're going to have to beat LSU late, and then they'll have the, if they win that, they'll probably have the chance to go up against Georgia and see if they can pull off an upset. But this is what Nick Saban's going to want to do for now. They're going to try to take as much pressure off Milroe as possible, keep him comfortable, keep him from making the big mistake, run the ball, play really good defense. This defense is coming along quick. I mean, I will say that they're starting to look like an Alabama defense quickly. So it's going to keep them in games. We'll see where they go. This is going to be a typical Nick Saban, coach them up job. In a couple weeks, we're going to be sitting there staring at Alabama probably being 7-1. And, then you'll have all the crazy pundits talking, how this team can still do this, this, and this. I don't see that. But, I mean, LSU hasn't knocked my socks off. I don't know about you guys, and Texas A&M is definitely not there now. But it's I think the SEC West is wide open, and I think Alabama still just I said it earlier. More things change, the more they stay the same. I think we're pointing to another year where Alabama probably sneaks out of the SEC West somehow. It's going to be crazy, but we'll see. A lot of football left to go. Conductor Cottrell, where we go next? Florida State, Clemson. Wild game. Wild. Dabo. I think Dabo screwed his kids a little bit in this game, but you a walk-on kicker back that had a kick towards the end of regulation to win it. Kid missed it. Went into overtime.
Oops.
Oh God. Went into overtime. Florida State came out, scored, stopped Clemson on some bizarre play calling. Man, this is. I'm gonna let you guys go first. I don't even know how I really want to approach this game.
I'll approach it direct and tell everybody exactly what I told you guys in the group chat. Dabo Swinney coached like a rookie coach. Like there's no other way to put it. He coached scared, he coached cowardly, and it ultimately cost his guys the game here. Now, obviously, Cade Klubnik getting the forced fumble on the sack and Florida State going to score. That was a huge, momentum shift, huge change in the game. But there was a situation where Clemson had the opportunity to kick a go ahead field goal before it even got to overtime. And there was a third down call, and Dabo played that super conservative. He didn't let Cade air it out, didn't give the ball to Will Shipley, played it super conservative, didn't gain many yards, and they kicked the field goal. Kid missed. I mean, it was a chip shot, and the kid missed. Defense comes to play. They get Florida State stopped, and the game goes to overtime. And in overtime, you are on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, and you don't give the ball to Will Shipley. I just don't understand what you're doing in that game. Will Shipley is clearly your best player, and taking the ball out of his hands there just doesn't make sense. If there's anybody on the entire Clemson roster to get me 1 yard, it's going to be Will Shipley. I mean, he's been their bright spot in these last couple years of essentially failure, and Dabo decides not to give him the ball. And it just seemed very uncharacteristic. The way he played his timeouts in certain situations just didn't seem like Dabo. And I thought he was coaching scared and pretty cowardly in that one. So I think he cost his team the chance to potentially make up some ground and in their season still be alive. At this point, they are dead in the water.
Man, did you guys see the story about that kicker? Like before he went out to kick that potential game-winning field goal, they were talking about him, about how he was on the team for 4 years, only kicked the ball like twice, and then he left the team to focus on studies, finishing his graduate program. And Dabo calls him and says, "Hey, our kickers are terrible. Come out and kick for us." Honestly, it set it up for a Hollywood moment. I was like, this kid's going to win the game. This can be the biggest story of the week. And then he shanked the 29-yarder, and I was shocked. I was like, they literally Hollywood couldn't have wrote it any better, and the kid missed it. I felt super bad for him. But I digress. Back to the game. I mean, Clemson had 429 yards. Florida State only had 311. Florida State is lucky to not be being moved over to the Pretender side this week. That game should have been Clemson's. I mean, they dominated the whole game. Up until that fourth quarter, I didn't really see a lot of life from Florida State. Keon Coleman came through with the overtime catch, which is one of the best catches of the game. Keon Coleman is a stud, and I can't wait to see him on Sundays. And Cade Klubnik's third quarter fumble changed the whole momentum, just like Cottrell said. I was watching live when that play happened. I actually just went back to the game as he was being sacked and ball was popping out, and I didn't turn the game off the rest of the way because that game was definitely an intense one. But I'm not impressed by Florida State. At the beginning of the year, I was like Florida State all the way to go into the college football playoff. After this last game, playing against a much weaker Clemson team, I don't really know what to think about Florida State right now, and so I'm going to have to watch a couple more games to really make up my mind on them.
I think the strength of Florida State's team is obviously their offense. Jordan Travis, we're going to talk about him in a couple minutes. Keon Coleman's been a godsend for them transferring in from Michigan State. Their defense, though, I think, is you're starting to see. When we previewed them in the beginning of the year, they had a decent defensive line, which they do. Their back seven is not strong, and you're starting to see teams poke holes in that. And I think eventually they're going to play somebody that's going to consistently throw the ball against them and then run off of that, and I think Florida State's in trouble. I don't know if that team's in the ACC. That's the problem. If they can survive, keep surviving, getting W's. And listen, I know this isn't a Clemson team from 5 years ago by any means. Don't get me wrong. Going into Clemson against, a pretty good defense, their defense is still very good. Coming out with an overtime win, still not a bad win. It's a W you'd like to have every year. So I know Clemson's a little bit down this year. It's still a big win for Florida State. Clemson's not going to be ranked. They're not going to be ranked for a while, if at all, depending on how the rest of their season goes. At the end of the season, though, on the resume, it's still going to pop out to you. It's still going to look good. So it's a big win for Florida State. I don't think they are a shoo-in or maybe have looked consistently as good as some of the other teams. And I think you can make that argument. But that being said, they have two really big wins now. So they're fourth in the polls, and I think they're going to stay there for a while until they slip up. So, but ACC is it's. I would say this: I think the ACC race is going to end up being completely different than most of us thought. And it's shaping up to be a little bit more interesting than I think a lot of us thought. So that's always good as well. So we'll see how this plays out down the road in the next couple of weeks. I think we're doing Penn State, Iowa next.
Jeez.
Spoiled the intrigue there.
Yeah. Iowa stinks. Let's just get this out of the way. Penn State did what they had to do. Played good defense. Ran the ball. Drew Aller looked great. Not a bunch of yards, 4 touchdown passes, though. They were very selective when they took their shots. Cade McNamara should probably focus more on getting completing a pass to somebody on his team, and preferably a wide receiver, rather than throwing shade at maybe ex-teammates or the program he came from before. Because you went out and got beat 31-0 and got embarrassed. 5 of 14, 42 yards. That's a bad high school game for a bad high school quarterback. 6 fumbles. Penn State recovered 4 of them. Very just dominant win. I don't think we'd spend too much time on this game. Penn State looked great. They got another 2 games. Then they go to Columbus, and we see what's what. So, again, Penn State, whiteout game, did what they had to do. All facets of the game, dominated Iowa. You guys can jump in here and say whatever you want to say. I'm done with it. Iowa is exactly who we thought Iowa was. Go away.
I'll keep it brief as possible. Penn State's team in general, they didn't impress me until probably, I'd say more so the second half. That was when I really started to appreciate what Penn State was doing. Defense looked great the entire game. Iowa's never had a world beater offense by any means, but I was expecting more from Cade. I know he had, one of his tight ends was out in that game, but I was expecting more from that Iowa offense. And I mean, Penn State, I think, this was kind of one of those games. I'm not going to say that really puts that Penn State team on the map because they were already there, but beating a conference opponent in Iowa who, before the season, people thought might, make it to Big Ten championship game, and they still might have that opportunity as well. But putting up 31 and keeping that game a shutout, I think it's going to build confidence, if nothing else, in that Penn State team.
I was also really high on Iowa this season. So it's been a really emotional week for me with Ole Miss getting handled by Alabama, then Iowa not even showing up against Penn State. I'm just going to throw out a couple stats. I'm not even going to talk about Penn State. 31-0 tells you everything you need to know. But Iowa, their defense had 0 sacks. Okay. They had four first downs the entire game. Guess how many completed passes they had? They had 6 completed passes. Penn State's defense is good, and Iowa's offense is terrible. But you're telling me you can't complete more than 6 passes when you're down by 31 in a game? Like, that is absolutely crazy. They had the ball for 14 minutes, y'all. They didn't even have the ball for a full quarter. I mean, that game was absolutely atrocious. And yes, Iowa was without 2 running backs and their starting tight end, but they still had Alt there who had transferred in from Michigan, and that's one of and he came over with McNamara from Michigan. So there's got to be some chemistry there. They got to have something that they had worked out. I'm absolutely embarrassed. The game was manageable at halftime, only 10-0. I mean, shoot, the only drive that Penn State didn't score on was a missed field goal. I mean, it was like Penn State was going up against a practice squad. I mean, it was. All right, I'm honestly done complaining about it because it was not even a game worth talking about.
Iowa's got a lot to fix, and they better do it quick. I don't know when they have Wisconsin. That game's got to be coming up soon. So, but we're going to go to the 2 main events now. We're going to start up in Autzen Stadium. Oregon 42, Colorado 6. Got to tell you, this is one of those games. There's a lot of hype around it. I think a lot of us thought it was going to be closer than this. I hate to say it because I don't like saying this. in terms of living up to the hype, this game was a dud. This game, it was very evident very early how this game was going to go. Oregon came out on fire. Colorado looked like a deer in headlights. Not saying they weren't ready. I just think Oregon just came out executing everything perfectly on both sides of the ball. Colorado just kind of got hit by a truck and didn't know what happened to them, and they really could just never get into the game. Shorter Sanders is running for his life all game. Leads Division I in sacks now. The kid's getting just brutalized behind that patchwork offensive line they have in front of them. And Bo Nix looked incredible. He had that offense. They ran up tempo, threw the ball, ran the ball whenever they wanted to. They dominated. It's the first word that comes to mind, and if you watch the game, that's what you're going to see. Alex, I'm going to let you go first on this because these are your boys. I don't want to steal too much of your thunder. I know you're happy with the outcome. I know you're happy with the score. I know you guys, not clicks. What do you think?
Honestly, that pregame speech got me pumped. I was ready to throw on the shoulder pads at the house, ready to go down to Eugene and play myself. But in all realisticness, the game 6-40, 42-6 wasn't really in question. I was surprised on the fact that Colorado only did score 6 points. I did expect them to put up a little bit of a fight. In our picks last week, I did have them covering that 21 or 20.5 point spread that they needed to cover. I thought the game would be more like 42-28. Oregon's defense looked good. I mean, total domination, 522 yards versus 199 yards for Colorado, who didn't even put up 200 total yards of offense after averaging over 500 the first 3 weeks of the season. Oregon had 7 sacks. Earlier in the season, one of my main complaints was that Oregon's defense was not getting to the quarterback and applying pressure. That is no longer a concern of mine. See 7 sacks. I think he had like 50%. He was pressured on 50% of his snaps, as I believe the statistic I saw online yesterday. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. Like I said, the Ducks outgained them by 300 yards. They had 30 first downs to 15. I mean, the game never looked in question. Shedeur Sanders, great athlete. He couldn't do nothing. That defense couldn't stop. The defense couldn't stop it if you paid him to. I mean, I don't really know how to harp on this game anymore. I mean, the game should have been probably, I'd say 70-6, but after Whittington got hurt in this third quarter, they kind of pulled back the reins. It didn't look like Dan Lanning wanted to stop scoring at all after he talked to the press at halftime. He said that they were not done. They went to the locker room. Bo Nix said they were not done. They scored quickly after the half, and then when Whittington went down, they kind of pulled back the reins. You don't want to have any of your players hurt, especially in a game that was as one-sided as this. So I was really happy with what I saw.
And for me, I think Oregon offensively looked exactly how I was expecting them to. I didn't think Colorado would have any answer for Bo Nix in the air, and I knew they wouldn't have any answers for that Oregon, Ducks team on the ground either. But on the flip side of it, that Oregon defense came to play. And I think just seeing them play against, other teams so far, specifically that Texas Tech game, Texas Tech didn't necessarily do like a great job of just dominating that Oregon defense. But seeing how they were able to move the ball, I was expecting more out of Colorado, especially in this game. And, with all the talk beforehand, I have no issues with it. I know we haven't addressed it yet. I have no issues with, what the Colorado players were saying. And I have no issues with what Dan Lanning said in the locker room. I know there's been some controversy, surrounding and things like that. But in college football, you go to any environment like this, a conference game that's at stake against 2 undefeated, ranked teams, the emotions are going to run high, and nothing was said was disrespectful. Talking about, kicking players' ass on the field, like between those players on the field, that gets said at every college football game. So I have no issues there. But I want to give credit to Oregon because they didn't let any of the distractions, confuse their play on the field. Everybody went out there and they followed their game plan to the T. And for Colorado, this was the first game where not only did they look human, they looked completely lost without Travis Hunter. And even if Travis Hunter was playing, that game wouldn't have been much closer. It might have been 35-6, maybe 35-10. at best. So you got to give all the credit to the Ducks out there in Oregon taking care of their home field.
Gene's in the comments. We got a couple guys in the comments stomping on the O. Yeah. I mean, I don't. That stuff I don't like. The stuff you want to talk pregame when you're running by each other and you get your team fired up that way. I'm all for that. I've never been a big proponent of going on an opponent's field and kind of going after their trademark thing. And that,
not a fan of it either.
Yeah, that's a different level to me. I think that boils down into going into somebody's home and disrespecting their house type thing. You want to go into somebody's house and disrespect them, beat them on the scoreboard, take your win, talk whatever trash you want, and roll out. Going in and kind of trying to, do something to the field or something like that. That's not my thing. I'm old school that way. That's not my type deal. But 42-6 is a pretty definitive answer to that. So, sucks we won't get to see the rematch of this next year. But, it's I think it kind of puts, in my opinion, it puts both teams more succinctly in a place of where I think most people kind of really thought they were. Oregon is no doubt a top 10 team. I think Colorado is going to be very entertaining. I think they're going to probably be able to beat a lot of the middle of the road teams and teams they should beat. I don't think they're going to be able to beat anybody that's considered elite in the Pac-12. And I think that's fair. And I still think that puts Colorado ahead of where a lot of people thought they were going to be. I said it week 1 when we did the show, there's a lot of people saying Colorado's win total should be 2.5 or even 1.5. Dan Mullen went on ESPN and said they're going to win 2 games. They have 3 already. So Dion has those guys way ahead of schedule, and that program's on the rise. So, I mean, they're coming. I mean, he's going to continue to recruit and they're going to continue to get better. But Oregon is an elite team right now. Oregon is a team that absolutely, has a chance to win, at least get to the college football playoff. Offense is very good. Defense is, I think, better than people thought. And we'll go from there. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But we get to the main event now. Ohio State, Notre Dame. Lower scoring than I think a lot of people thought it was going to be, myself included. I thought it was going to be a close game like this. I absolutely did. I thought the game played out a little bit differently than I thought it was going to, though. I think Sam Hartman was very tentative. I think the play calling for Notre Dame was very tentative. I think Ohio State's defense for spurts in this game looked dominant. I think Notre Dame's defense is a lot better than people think it is. And not going to take too much credit, but I said the key to this game for Ohio State was for TreVeyon Henderson to look like TreVeyon Henderson, and he did. Had the one big run, which accounted for a lot of those 104 yards, but his other 13 carries, a lot of them were big carries, 33s, getting first downs, keeping the chains moving, keeping the pressure off Kyle McCord. I'm going to let Cottrell get into this because it's his boys. The last 2 drives of the game were the most exciting parts of the game, which it was just kind of like a really, really big drawn out tease. And then we got touchdown in the game, which was crazy. So it was a good ending. I like Marcus Freeman. I don't want to put too much blame on him, but I think he really dropped the ball the last 2 minutes of the game. But Cottrell, I'm gonna let you get into this in depth. These are your guys. I don't want to take too many of your talking points or anything away, but get into it, buddy. What'd you think? What'd you see? What'd you feel?
So, I mean, I think the biggest thing was that I was expecting the game to be a little bit more high scoring. I think I said 31-21 or 31-24, something like that, Ohio State. And I was definitely expecting more points to be put up. But to your point, I think Notre Dame's defense did look a lot better than what I was expecting. I knew they had a good defense. I just didn't know that they would be able to, for the most part, hold, Mecca Buka, Marvin Harrison Jr., and even Henderson in check. I thought they would do a great job in the run game, which they did outside of that one. You take away that big TreVeyon carry, and he's probably, high threes per carry. And so I was kind of expecting that to be the case. On the other side of the ball, I definitely had my question marks with Ohio State's defense. I knew they'd be able to stop Estime. I knew he wouldn't be able to hit his normal averages. The one thing that concerned me, though, was that Ohio State had been very prone to giving up the big play in their big games last year. You saw it against Michigan in that game. They would give up the 60, 70-yard runs to Donovan Edwards. And of course, you saw it in the CFP semifinal against Georgia, where that was how Georgia got back in the game, big play after big play. So with Sam Hartman having that experience and just knowing the kind of arm talent that he had, I thought he would be able to, pick us apart down the field. But Jim Knowles called a hell of a game, and so I can't be mad at what Ohio State did there. Now, I will say the one thing that got me excited about this game was Kyle McCord had to go down and score a touchdown, lead a touchdown scoring drive to win this football game. And there was never a point where he flinched at the pressure. I know previously when CJ Stroud was tasked with that, it almost felt like every time it was like, he's not gonna go down there and lead us. And with Kyle McCord, not gonna lie, as hopeful as I was for it, I was not expecting him to go down and lead us all the way. So I will say I definitely was impressed by Kyle McCord having the calm, cool, collective nerves and fully prepared to lead us down the field and score. Threw an absolute missile on 3rd and 19 to get Ohio State down to the 1-yard line, and obviously Chip punched it in from there. But I mean, it was a great game. I think it's a great test for that Ohio State team. And, I think that's the kind of game that they needed to gain some confidence on this year, knowing that they got a quarterback that can ultimately go out there and go win them the football game.
This is a two-sided thing for me. I'm not going to take credit away from the kid because I think when you look at that throw, people are like, oh, like, I hate the defense Notre Dame came out in 3rd and 19. I hate it.
It was so soft. It was soft.
It was dumb, and I can't stand it. They gave him the time to make that throw. Now, here's the credit why I will give Kyle McCord, and this is the part that I don't like what people are doing. If you watch that play, he knows where that route is going to take that wide receiver, and he throws it a little bit back shoulder to make sure neither one of those defenders can make a play on the ball. You have to give him credit for that. That is a smart throw. That is a throw that I think Cottrell would agree is the type of throws that the Ohio State fans have been waiting to see from him. That was a great throw. I hate that Marcus Freeman gave him the opportunity to sit back there and make that throw with that. He, in essence, went into prevent defense, which I just don't get it. I hate it. And then on top of that, you have, the running play at the end with only 10 guys on the field. How nobody called timeout on that is beyond me. Some of this has to be put on Marcus Freeman. I'm going to give way more credit to Ohio State. They got the ball and they drove down the field and scored. And that's what big time teams do. I think it's a great win for Ohio State. I think it still answers. There's still a lot of questions to be asked of both of these teams. But I think you have a lot more answers than you did before. I think Ohio State is going to be there just like we thought they were going to be. Notre Dame, huge game later on today. We're going to talk about it in a couple minutes. But, Alex, you have anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be quick. I mean, Ohio State's offensive line did a phenomenal job. They only allowed 2 tackles for loss the entire game, keeping McCord, which I believe I said last week was half their battle was keeping McCord upright, and if they're able to do that, they're going to be able to put up some numbers. Granted, I was wrong on putting up the numbers part, but him staying upright did allow him to complete that 19-yard pass, which, like Bill just said, that defense was so soft. But again, he had the awareness to make that throw, the arm strength. He showed that off on that pass, and he looked really good on that throw. But honestly, for me, Notre Dame lost. There was 2 drives that Notre Dame lost this game on. He had 2 turnovers on downs, 4th and 1, and on both plays, they had Hartman run the ball. Why are you having Hartman run the ball when you have Estime, who's averaging 5 yards per carry in the game, and he's the best? He's the leading running back in the nation. How do you not hand the ball off right there to get those 2 first downs? One of them coming late in the game. So for me, it's a lot of questionable coaching calls, and I think that they need to iron some things out before Notre Dame becomes real contenders going forward.
Good segue, Alex. We're going to go into our college football eliminator segment here. We're going to bring the graphic up, and a lot of movement this week. A lot of movement. We might have some newcomers too.
All right, so
here we go. So on the left, you see North Carolina has snuck in there. They're still undefeated. Duke is there now. Everybody else has been there since the beginning of the year. Or no, do we just add Oklahoma to Oklahoma?
Oklahoma's been at it.
Oklahoma's been at it. They got a big game coming up in a few weeks with the team right below them, Texas Longhorns. That's going to be an eliminator game. Other than that, you got Georgia, Miami, who've been there all year. The 3 Pac-12 teams on the left, Washington, Oregon, USC. Those games are coming, people. They're going to be great. They're coming. You got Michigan, Ohio State in the middle. Duke, North Carolina, we just added. And then obviously Penn State and Florida State have been there at the beginning of the year. You got LSU on the other side. You got LSU. They got a lot more company than they did after week 1. TCU still over there. We've added Ole Miss. Clemson, you're done. As we move more teams over, you guys are so bad, you're probably not even going to fit on the graphic by the end of the year. You're just going to be off this damn thing. Tennessee still over there. Fortunately, we had to add Utah. A&M. Notre Dame is now hanging by a thread. We had a pretty spirited discussion about this on Wednesday about Notre Dame. There is a way back. It is brutal. It's brutal. They have to win out, and they need a lot of help. First impressions, thoughts. Who do you think has a shot to get back to the other side, or who you think might go from the contender to the pretender side this week? A lot going on here. It's a busy week for the eliminator. It's a busy week for the eliminator. A lot of moving for Cottrell.
I think for me, the team that I'm looking at getting moved back over here is gonna be Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame has, obviously, we're going to talk about the Notre Dame Duke game, but I think depending on how they look in that game, if you travel down to Duke and you take care of business and you put out a statement, I think that can ultimately get you moved back over to the contender side, especially because you were within 1 yard and in one player of still being on that contender side and Ohio State being on the flip side of things. So I think they have the opportunity to put out a statement win today against that Duke team and let everybody know, hey, we are for real. And, we deserve to be on that contender side.
Yeah, I mean, I think today a couple teams on the pretender sides get X's put through them and gets knocked out for the rest of the year. I'm not too, after watching last week, I'm not excited on Ole Miss anymore. A&M's falling out. Notre Dame was one of my earlier season picks for a college football playoff. I don't know, man. This last week really messed up my predictions. But I do anticipate at least 2 teams getting moved over to pretenders today. I'm not going to reveal who because I'm going to talk about it. I didn't pick them. But I like where our list is at. And next week, I think we're going to add one more team to that contender side. And we'll cover that later, though. I don't want to give too much away.
I think the best part about this is we have, especially in the SEC, the next couple of weeks, we have what are literally, they're going to become eliminator games. A&M plays Alabama in a couple of weeks. I know LSU has, I think, A&M in a couple of weeks. Tennessee has Georgia in a couple of weeks. Utah is eventually going to play, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, USC. They have no room for error. So some of these teams are, that red X you see over the Clemson Paul, that's going to become a lot more common on the right side.
There will be for sure 2 red X's on the pretender side because we get a LSU Ole Miss matchup today. So one of them is done for the year.
It's true. If Duke could find a way to beat Notre Dame's going to have an X.
Yep.
This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun because it's going to become a war of attrition. It really is. Penn State goes to Ohio State in 3 weeks, I think. That becomes a big game. Like I said, the Pac-12 the Pac-12, the mother's starting to eat their young. That's going to start happening soon. Red River rivalry, you have that in a couple weeks. Miami, the top right corner, is just kind of chilling. I'd have to look at their schedule. I don't know when they have Florida State or Duke or Clemson or anybody. I mean, they got to have somebody coming up soon. So, we decided to do this, kind of really late in the game before we started the show, and I'm glad we did, because it's going to become a lot more fun the further into the season we get. It's going to become a lot harder to stay on the left side of this graphic. So, we are done with this for now. This is where we currently sit, and we're going to get into some Heisman talk. We're pretty much at the quarter point of the season. We all gave our predictions at the beginning of the season. Not predictions per se, but preseason Heisman watch list. We're 3-4 games in now, so I think a lot of these lists are going to look a little bit different. Maybe some of the same names, but probably in a different order. Alex, it looks like you're going first. Conductor picked you, so have at it, bud.
Yeah, no worries. My list honestly hasn't changed too much. Just a little bit of shuffling. From week 1, or should I say week 0, I've had Michael Penix Jr. Absolutely, taking over the Heisman this year, and he has not changed that spot. I don't think anybody could argue with me putting him at 1 right now with the way he's been playing. Bo Nix, his stats aren't the greatest, but he hasn't had a game besides against Texas Tech where he's played a full game, so we can't really look at his stats too much. But he does have that signature comeback against Texas Tech, down by 14, and then the absolute dominance on national TV against millions of people against Colorado this last week, which I think that exposure to the media jumps him up above Caleb Williams right now. Obviously, Caleb Williams is defending Heisman winner. He's been playing fantastic all year. Still no turnovers. Colorado did force Bo Nix to have his first interception last week, so we'll see if Colorado is able to make some turnover magic happen this week as well. Jaden Daniels have been high on since the beginning of the season. After their loss to Florida State, I kind of took a couple of steps back from him. But honestly, right now, I don't know if there's an offense in the country hotter right now than LSU. They've been absolutely dominating the last few weeks, and I expect them to continue dominating all the way to the college football playoff. You heard it here first. And then Cameron Ward. We just talked about him a little bit ago with the Washington State-Oregon State game. Dude is throwing up mad numbers, 400 yards a game. His offensive weapons are absolutely unrealistic how good they are. Their defense is going to be what holds them back from the college football playoff. But as long as they can win a couple games and being contenders in that Pac-12 title hunt towards the last couple weeks of the season, I think he's going to get a lot of headway going into the Heisman voting. But I do think, and my big take here is that a Pac-12 quarterback will win the Heisman, and you can tell my opinion by 4 of my 5 are Pac-12 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, and you've been consistent with that throughout the year so far, even before the season started. So definitely got to give you all the credit in the world there. Those Pac-12 quarterbacks are representing. All right, so I think my list is actually next here, and you'll see some similar names. You'll also see you see one different name here, and I'm going to start off go 5-1. Caleb Williams is having an absolutely phenomenal year, and with his numbers alone, in all honesty, he probably should be 2. The kid won the award last year, so he has to put up ridiculous numbers for him to win the award again this year. Number 4 for me, I got Bo Nix. Alex already talked about him. He had the performance last week against that Colorado team, and probably, deserves to be higher than where Shedeur is at. But the other thing is that when you look at it from a number standpoint, Shedeur's got more yards. He has the same 1 interception, and they have the same amount of touchdowns at this point. So I do think, Shedeur is getting more love than he should at this point because of the hype around Colorado and things like that. I think there's a feel good with them. Everybody's on prime. Could Bo Nix be at 3 and Shedeur be at 4? 100%. I think these guys are interchangeable here. And, Bo Nix did just win the head-to-head matchup. If I could change one thing, I probably would change that. I probably have Bo at 3 and Shedeur at 4. But I think those two guys, numbers-wise, they're so tight. I gave the edge to Shedeur because he does have a few more yards, and that's not Bo's fault because, to Alex's point, Bo really hasn't had the opportunity to play in full games. But I just think Shedeur has the slight numbers advantage there. Number 2 for me, I got Cameron Ward. Cam Ward has been playing absolutely out of his mind so far, and I think the performance last week that he put up against that Oregon State team really did it for me. I mean, Cam Ward was a guy we talked about leading that Washington State team in obviously passing, but also in rushing at that point. And so Cam Ward's a guy who is, I think his name should be put on the map, and he would be my favorite had it not been for that guy in charge of the Washington Huskies team. Michael Penix Jr. has been playing absolutely out of his mind. Washington hasn't had a game that's close yet. They look otherworldly. O'Dunes is there in their receiving core. He's looked absolutely incredible so far as well. I think right now Michael Penix Jr. is starting to run away with the Heisman.
I still can't believe you put Sanders 3. That's crazy.
I could put him at 4. I said I could put him at 4.
I can't believe he's on your list after last week.
Yeah,
I think last week completely got him off the list for me.
He's got better numbers still than some of the guys that he's got better numbers than Jaden, and they both have one loss already. He's got better numbers than Jordan, but I can respect Jordan Travis being on the list because the guy's still undefeated.
Yeah, so Jordan Travis, that's where I'm going to start. He was on my original list, moved down a little bit. They are still undefeated. He hasn't looked as great as he did week 1 against LSU. Still putting up good numbers. They're still winning. He's definitely still in the conversation. Bumped down a spot for me to number 5, though. Bo Nix, number 4. Bo Nix, I think, Bo Nix is going to have every opportunity in the world to climb up this list. I'll say that. Everything he needs to do to win the Heisman is still in front of him. I think Bo Nix has been hurt a little bit by the same reason I took Blake Corum off the list. Blake Corum's playing great. He hasn't had a carry in the fourth quarter of a game yet this year. He's just not going to put up the monster numbers that he did last year because they'd rather keep him healthy. Bo Nix and Oregon are blowing everybody out. He's not playing deep into these games. It's probably taken away from his numbers a little bit. That being said, he's right in the thick of this. I think there's a difference. I think there's a decent-sized gap between Bo Nix and Jordan Travis right now, and then everybody ahead of him. Number 3, I have Caleb Williams. Went up one spot for me. The difficult part of this is what I said when I originally put him on my list. Cottrell hit it right on the head. His numbers are actually slightly above last year's pace. I don't think they're going to be able to be that far ahead at the end of the year for him to seriously have consideration to win this award again. It's only been done once. It is so hard to win the Heisman back-to-back years. He almost to do something incredible or, otherworldly to repeat as champion. I think if USC can go undefeated somehow, make the college football playoff, and his numbers are better than they were last year, then I think he might be a slam dunk to win the award. That's a lot of big ifs, though. So he's got to keep playing well. USC's got to keep winning football games and winning big games against ranked people nonetheless. I think he stays on this list. Number 2, Cam Ward. I think this is going to be everybody's sentimental, kind of like, David versus Goliath pick. I think Washington State has to keep winning football games because his numbers alone will keep him in this race. He's playing out of his mind. He's got that team looking better than they have probably in a decade. He is playing great football. They have to keep beating the teams that they're supposed to beat, and then they probably have to have an upset somewhere. I think if week 7 or week 8, if Washington State is undefeated, only has one loss, but somehow they beat a Utah or they beat an Oregon or they beat Washington or beat USC, I think he's going to start getting serious, consideration behind his run then. But until then, this is kind of a one-guy race right now. If Michael Penix Jr. stays upright, Washington keeps winning, I think he is. I think he's running away from the award right now. I agree with Cottrell. I agree with Alex. I think he's the man to beat right now. He's putting up just otherworldly numbers right now. Washington looks incredible. He's the hot name. He's absolutely going to be the guy that if you want to win the Heisman, you have to catch him and you got to pass him. So I think Michael Penix is a definitive number 1 in the Heisman race right now. So we pretty much all have the same.
Alex, you're mute.
Oh yeah, no, that was my bad. But a quick note before you go on from the Cameron Ward is that they actually don't play Utah or USC this year, so that actually does help them a little bit.
That will help. That will help. He's gonna have to. He's gonna have to listen. The record at that point will then help his team. So he only plays what, Oregon and Washington.
So they play Oregon in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I'm not sure if there's a bye in there. And then they play Washington in Washington the last week of the year, but they got the Ducks in Pullman. So they do have a chance there. They have upset Oregon recently there. So I'm not excited about that game. But that last game against Washington, we could be talking about a Washington State making the Pac-12 championship with the schedule they have.
Pullman, not a place you want to go late in the season, I'm telling you. Especially if that team's good. If they're not good and it's just, not that they're going to roll over, but it's not super exciting. It's not awful. You go up there if that team's 7-0 going into that game, that place will be packed. Bo Nix will have his work cut out for him that night. Get it done. But so we're gonna go from there. We'll talk a little coaching carousel type thing here. Michigan State made it official this week. They fired Mel Tucker for cause. I still don't think we have any kind of a clear picture of what actually did happen, what didn't happen, who said it was okay, who said it wasn't okay. A lot of questions floating in the air that I don't think we're going to know for a while until this probably goes to court and everything gets laid out on the record. So I don't really want to focus on so much as the firing, if it was justified, how we think, and how we think it ends up playing out in court. Does Tuck get paid? Does he not get paid? I don't want to really focus on that because I don't think there's enough information or facts for us to really, form a real opinion on it. I want to focus on who's going to replace him. Michigan State's in a really, really weird spot right now. 2 down years in a row. They're in debatably the toughest division in football that is now going away. And you have UCLA, USC, Oregon, and Washington joining the Big Ten. I don't think you can consider this a top tier. It's definitely not an elite tier job. I think we could all agree on that. But I always kind of thought Michigan State was towards the top of the next group. Not a blue blood or a powerhouse or an elite team, but I think it's still a really attractive job. But I think Michigan State's fallen down a lot in the pecking order in the Big Ten, especially with the 4 Pac-12 teams coming next year. Who do you think they get? I came up with 3 names. Who do you think they get? How attractive of a job do you think it is really? And how easy do you think it's going to be for them to pull a big name? Cottrell.
Well, I think
Alex, go ahead. You're in. Go.
Perfect. Let me just jump in here. All right. So I also nailed it. Dropped it down to 3 names. I'm going to give you the first 2 names, and then my last name is going to be who I ultimately think gets the job. First on the docket is going to be Brian Hartline, the offensive coordinator for Ohio State. I think, with what he's done with the Ohio State offensive team, they gave him a raise and they gave him a promotion. Am I right, Cottrell, this last year?
Offensive coordinator.
OC. Yeah, there we go. So, I think he's kind of primed for that next coaching job. A kind of off-the-wall candidate that I have is actually going to be Jonathan Smith, the coach from Oregon State. With the conferences kind of realigning and Oregon State rumored to go to the Mountain West Conference, I don't think that Oregon State has as much draw as a Michigan State would as a coach for ability to recruit players and grow a brand. And ultimately, my last and my favorite person to take over the coaching job is actually already in the building. He is Michigan State's associate coach. He's 67 years old. He's got 3 Big Ten titles. And he is also interested in coming back, and that's going to be Mark D'Antonio. I remember him from back in the day, took them to the college football playoff in 2015? And he's in the building right now, helping kind of move the regime along into the next hands, and he is interested in coming back. He's only 67. He's got a proven track record, and they absolutely love him there. So I can't think of anyone else to bring Michigan State back to the promised land than bring in the old ball coach.
So I think that makes a lot of sense there. That's a name that I don't have on my list, but that can be one that I could definitely see making sense there. I have 3 guys as well, and I'm gonna start off with one of the names that you already mentioned, being Brian Hartline. I think Brian Hartline is primed for a coaching position. I think with him being at Ohio State and his proven track record in terms of recruiting and getting the best receivers in the country to ultimately come to Ohio State, I think he could potentially get a job better than Michigan State, but the Michigan State job offer is nothing to potentially sneeze at. Michigan State is a great first job for any, coach that if that's going to be your first head coaching job. I think it'll be interesting to see in terms of, what offers Hartline has on the table. And if he may try to wait it out the coaching cycle. Cause I thought, there was a point, without getting too deep in the coaching carousel, but there was a point where we all thought that Florida might have a head coaching vacancy. And, that's the job that everybody's going to be clamoring for. So it'll be interesting to see how different jobs shake out. But I think with Brian Hartline, his amazing recruiting track record and just being familiar with the Midwest, I think that's a name you definitely have to look out for. Second team I'm going to go with, second guy I'm going to go with, Pat Narduzzi. Pat Narduzzi is the head coach with Pitt right now, and I think that could be a move where, going from Pitt to Michigan State, that is a move up, and he's familiar with that Michigan State area. He used to be a DC with that Michigan State team under D'Antonio, and I do think that he could have some interest in potentially going back there and rebuilding that program. I think that'd be a move that makes sense for him. Then the last name I'm thinking about is a guy who I ultimately think they do end up getting, and a move that makes sense be Matt Campbell. I think Matt Campbell, you throw the Brinks truck at him. Obviously, the Big 12 isn't going to be what it used to be with, those teams leaving out, like Texas, Oklahoma, leaving the conference. I think for Matt Campbell, he is familiar with that Midwest area, being a guy that used to coach at Bowling Green and coach at Toledo. He knows how to recruit in that area, and he has, strong Ohio ties. And I think in terms of recruiting, he'd be a great person to, steal a lot of the recruits out of Ohio and bring them to Michigan State. And so I think Matt Campbell's a guy, you want to bring in a name that attracts other people and that'll attract recruits and be able to turn that team around quickly. So I ultimately think they go out and they try to get Matt Campbell away from Iowa State.
All right. I like some of the names you guys have both said. The Matt Campbell name, I think, has cooled down a little bit because of what's going on with that program, and also just, after they lost Breece Hall and that senior class, they haven't looked the same. I think it would be a really good reset for Matt Campbell. I think he's probably one of the names that gets listed. Hartline, I think, is the top of everybody's list. I think they'll definitely call him. I kind of agree with Cottrell in the sense that I think Michigan State is a good job. I can't see Hartline going from Ohio State to Michigan State, just in terms of staying in the Big Ten. And I also think he can get a better job. And I think it boils down to how long he wants to wait to get a job. I thought the Cincinnati job would have been great for him last year because of his recruiting track record in that area. But ultimately, he took the bump and stayed and took the money and, the promotion at Ohio State. So I think if he balked at Cincinnati, I don't know how much higher up the list Michigan State is from Cincinnati, I guess is my point. So I don't know if he jumps at that. But to Cottrell's other point, it is a big school in the Big Ten. So, I mean, I don't know how many other jobs to be your first head coaching job, how many better opportunities are going to be out there. So I will say this. I don't have Hartline on my list because my gut is he doesn't leave to go to a Big Ten school, or right away anyway. That being said, I will not be shocked if he gets the job, because I feel like if he wants the job, I think Hartline is probably the favorite to get the job. But these are the three names I came up with. Came up with Sean Lewis. He's currently the offensive coordinator at Colorado. Or a little deeper dive into this.
Action.
Yep, Cottrell knows who he is. He actually kind of did the weird, I guess, lateral step thing. He used to be the Kent State head coach. Dion came to him with an offer to be the OC at Colorado, and I think he thought that was better for his career. So he took the jump, went out to Boulder. Minus last week, I mean, you can't say the offense is the problem on Colorado. So He's done really well out there. I think it's a name that would possibly, show up on Michigan State's radar because he is familiar with the area. Coach at Kent State, familiar with recruits, coaches, everything in that area. I think he's a possibility. Next, I'm going to go with Matt House, who's currently the DC at LSU, has connections to Michigan State, coached there as a graduate assistant. At LSU, again, has a big name school on his resume. A younger guy that I think they would feel comfortable, kind of like in the same mold as Brian Hartline, somebody they think they can bring in and really let them rebuild the program and the culture there the right way, and have some legs to it and not use Michigan State as a stepping stone. And then the last name that I think is going to be very intriguing, we're about to talk about his team in a couple minutes. I think Mike Elko from Duke. I think however you slice it, he is a very senior-laden team right there, runs a very clean program, which, listen, I hate to say it, Michigan State has not had a good 3 years here. And it's not all the football team, so don't get me wrong. I'm not putting it all on the football program or even Mel Tucker, but that school in general has had nightmare after nightmare after nightmare dealing with things that have happened within the athletic department. You need somebody that's going to go there to run a clean program and get that program back on track. I think Mike Elko is gaining a lot of steam right now with what he's doing with Duke. And however you slice it, Duke is always going to be a basketball school. He is never going to be, and I know Michigan State's a basketball school, but Michigan State's football program is perennially a very good team. It's looked at as a high program. Duke's football program is not. The last couple of years, they've had a couple decent teams. This year being, kind of the one that sticks out the most because they're 4-0 and they play, they have a big game tonight. But very smart football coach. I think he definitely gets an interview, and I think if they call, I think he has to take it. Michigan State is definitely a step up football program-wise over Duke. So those are the three names I came up with. I think it's going to be very interesting. Like I said, I think there's 2 or 3 names that, if they do offer the program to them and they say yes, I think they're going to get the job. And I think Brian Hartline is definitely one of them. And then we'll see. I mean, it's, they might go super young. Maybe they give the guy that's there an interim another year until they feel comfortable going with somebody else. Who knows? But they're going to have to make up their mind soon because you have to have somebody. Yep, you have to have somebody in place for recruiting, especially early signing period in January. You have to have somebody that's on the ground, ready to hit the ground running and keep guys that are already committed there and try to start stealing guys from other places. So Michigan State's got their work cut out for them for sure. So that's how we all feel about Mel Tucker. Like I said, I've gotten a bunch of messages about the whole situation, how we feel about it. I don't want to put anything out in the universe that's on record saying one thing because we don't know the facts. I promise you, once it all comes out, we'll talk about it on the show. Because I know Cottrell kind of already feels one way about it. I'm a little bit different. I'm not sure how Alex feels about it. But between the three of us, none of us have anywhere close to what actually happened yet. And once we have a better idea of that, we will talk about it, I promise. So that's the only reason we've kind of skipped over it the last couple of weeks. I've gotten a bunch of messages on it. Let's do one thing to watch for real quick, and then we're going right into previews. Cottrell, I don't know how you want to handle this because I didn't know you guys were off this week till right before the show. So I guess, I don't know. The floor is open to you. Just say you can talk about whatever you like to talk about on Ohio State's bye week. Maybe how Ryan Day is maybe a little thin skinned. I don't know. I don't know what you want to talk about.
No, I mean, I think you've never seen any emotion from Ryan Day, and so he needed something to get under his skin and get behind his players' backs. And I would say within the past 2 years, there's only been one game where Ohio State has won the big one. It was the past few years, the biggest games they played, they've lost them. Michigan twice. You lost to Georgia in the college football playoff. So I think it's good that he showed that emotion there. I guess the one thing that I will talk about now, since Ohio State's on the bye, there's not really much to go over there. I'm really going to be interested to see the Georgia Auburn matchup. I think Georgia last week Their offense is finally, started to get it back on track. But I do think traveling to Auburn against that team that's been better than I thought they would be this year. They have an experienced quarterback. I think that game could potentially be closer than possible. Not saying Georgia's on upset alert, but that would be the one thing that I kind of am watching for. That's not like a game that's like, one of the ones that we're going to preview, seeing how Georgia goes to Auburn and ultimately, faces that adversity.
Curious to see how everybody feels about the game. A lot of people got Georgia on upset alert today. Very interesting. Traveling to Auburn, and we'll get into a couple minutes. Alex, Ducks coming off a big win. Any chance of a letdown? What are you looking for this week?
So they interviewed Dan Lanning and talked to him about last week's win and this week's upcoming game against Stanford. And he actually mentioned it. He said that this week he's keeping his guys focused so that his team doesn't have a letdown. All right, Justin, let's calm down on the Oregon State talk there, buddy. But no, in all honesty, today I want to see Oregon just not let down. I want to see him keep up the intensity. I don't want to see him let off the gas at all this week. But for me, the one thing I'm looking forward to this week is actually an individual matchup. It's not even in the Oregon Duck game. I'm excited to see Brendan Rice, son of Jerry Rice, and Shiloh Sanders, son of Deion Sanders, go head-to-head today. That's a matchup we saw back when their parents were in the league. And Brendan Rice this year is coming in with 5 touchdowns, 257 yards receiving. And then Shiloh Sanders, he's got 26 tackles, 1 interception, returned for a touchdown. If they do match up, I want to see that matchup today, and I'm excited to see what the future of the Rice and Sanders household look like. And I think that's the matchup I'm looking forward to the most today.
So we go on the road to Nebraska today. It's our first away game of the year. Obviously, always naturally, looking forward to see how they handle a road environment. Obviously, all these guys have, most of the guys on this team that are going to start and play significant time are, juniors or seniors. They've played a bunch of away games. But first one of the year, you always look for it. Want to see JJ rebound a little bit. Played better last week, but I think he's got to start being a little bit more aggressive. I want to see him stay consistently taking shots downfield. And then, Nebraska's got a good defense, so we're going to go up against a really good defense today finally, against rushing the ball anyway. I think this offensive line is a little bit, behind where they were the last 2 years. They got to toughen up a little bit, especially at the right tackle position. So I want to see how they fare against a very good defensive line today and see if they can still run the ball with Corum and Donovan. So is what I am looking for. I think Michigan ultimately wins Nebraska fairly easily, but I think they'll put up a fight to be in the game for sure, especially in front of that crowd. So that is one thing to watch for. Preview time, boys. 4 games this week. And I think two of them technically will be considered eliminator games. So we're going to start out in the Pac-12. Number 8, USC. 21.5-point favorites at Colorado. I'm not going to go too far in depth in this game because I'm picking this game. I'm just going to say that I think Colorado shows up with a better effort. Don't think they win the game by any means, but I think they probably had a hard week of practice. I think you'll learn a lot about that locker room and how much they trust Deion with how they respond today. You go on national TV like that and get embarrassed and get punched in the mouth. I think it's very important to see what your response is when you take the field the next time. They got Caleb Williams coming to town. All eyes are going to be on this game later this afternoon. I expect a better effort from Colorado, and I'll leave it there. So I will let you two guys dig into this.
I will say the one thing, and Justin, you already know I'm going to say it. Colorado covers today. I think that, for that USC defense, I honestly think if it was me, Alex, Bill, and I just found 8 guys on the street, 5 of them whom were big enough to play on the offensive line, I think we'd be able to score on that USC defense. They don't stop anybody. They can't stop anybody. We've seen it so far throughout the year. They have Caleb Williams, and he's going to be the guy that puts up all the points. I think USC has the ability to score 50 on whoever they want to in the entire country. But on the flip side of it, you got to stop teams from scoring points if you want to cover. So I think this will be a game ultimately that USC wins. But I think Colorado keeps this game close. You talk about it. You talk about it from last week and their performance against Oregon. I'd say that situation is very different in the sense of they were traveling to Oregon, and Oregon. You talk about Austin, and it's a terrible place for a team to go play, especially in your first game with true adversity. Yes, you went to TCU to play, different animal going up to Eugene to play those Ducks, and so I do think coming back home, still a big time matchup. Hey, we hear all the bad things about us. We hear that, we were pretenders and, now they're unranked. I do think that team is going to fight, and they're going to be able to pick up some rhythm because, again, that USC defense stinks. I think this one is going to be the high scoring game that we expected, last week, that shootout that we were expecting from last week. I'm going to go 45-35 USC, but I think Colorado keeps this game close.
Alex.
Yeah, I mean, it's 22.5-point spread. Dion said it last week. That game against Oregon was the worst you were going to see that team on the field. And frankly, after the first 3 weeks, there's nothing I've seen that I don't believe in. I believe they're going to get up for this game. They're in front of their home crowd. The guest list for the game is more exclusive than our contenders list of people who are going to this game. And honestly, the way that this game is going to go in Colorado's favor is two things need to happen. They need to come out and smack USC in the mouth, and they got to keep the game within 7 points in the first half. All right, that's first and foremost. Second half of the game, they need to slam the ball down USC's throat with Dylan Edwards and actually try to actually run the ball. Like, dedicate yourself to trying to establish a run game. Dylan Edwards is averaging 5.7 yards per carry this year as a freshman. That dude is nasty. Get him in the open field, hand him the ball up the middle. Let's see what he can do in the tackles. Shedeur Sanders has been sacked 22 times. If you want to be able to get bowl eligible this year, you got to keep him upright. All right. And the best way to do that is to hand the ball off. Get him out, get the ball out of Shedeur Sanders' hands, get into Dylan Edwards' hands, let him run free. Caleb Williams in the offense is going to do what they do on the other side of the ball and probably going to drop 42 points at least or more against this Colorado defense, which is absolute trash. All right. USC is going to run the ball. They're going to throw the ball. They're going to score. But if Colorado can keep up and keep the game within 7 points at halftime and actually run the ball today, like I said, they are averaging good. Dylan Edwards is averaging 5.7 yards per carry. Just give him the ball. All right. If you don't have your biggest playmaker with Hunter on the field, find someone else who's going to step up and make those plays. I'm hyped right now because I want Colorado to beat USC. I want teams in front of Oregon to lose. And honestly, Colorado's covering today. I don't know if they're going to win, but it's going to be a great game.
All right, a lot of. Alex loves the Pac-12. I love it.
I hear it.
I love it. Yeah,
and I will say too, the one thing that Colorado I think has in their favor, this is a noon kickoff. It's 10 o'clock in Boulder. USC, it's going to be 9 a.m. in their minds. From their time difference, I think they can potentially catch USC sleeping a little bit at the beginning. So, got to take advantage.
I want to know who the hell made these schedules this year. Like, how are you gonna make the kids kick off at 10 o'clock? Like that's just nuts to me. Like,
yeah, it is.
You don't want to make it the prime time game. Like, I understand that. Like, there was other games that were picked, and you got to move TV crews around. But like a 10
JV
o'clock
kickoff,
yeah, like come on, exactly what it is. Oh, varsity starts at 2, and you got the JV kids out at like 9 when the frost is on the field. Still, it's crap. Like, figure it out. All right, let's go down south. First one, here we go. This is an eliminator game. Number 13, LSU, at number 20, Ole Miss. Loser, done.
Hit the road, Jack.
Hit the road, Jack. 5 weeks into the season, got nothing to play for. No SEC West, no SEC championship game, no outside chance of college football playoff. That's a big game. That's big stakes for a week 5 game. LSU, Jaden Daniels. Ole Miss, Jackson Dart. I like LSU. I saw all I need to see out of Ole Miss last week. I know they're going to play a little bit better at home. It's not Tuscaloosa. They'll come in through the Grove and all that, and they'll do all that stuff at Ole Miss. That's fine. LSU's defense is more than capable of slowing them down, and LSU's offense, I think we can all agree, is way more explosive than Alabama's right now. I think Jaden Daniels and company get it done. I like them to go in. Probably a little bit more of a higher scoring game. I'll say, 33-28 27, something like that. I think LSU covers. Not one of my official picks this week, but I feel pretty strongly about LSU winning today, getting it done, surviving for one more week. Ole Miss, you're getting the Family Feud X, I think. I think we're coming for you. So, Alex, what do you think? SEC matchup today, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, LSU just needs to contain Jackson Dart. I mean, last week, against Alabama, Ole Miss only had 6 rushing yards. Judkins is not what we've seen. He was averaging 6.5 yards per carry last year, only averaging 3.5 this year. LSU's defense is much improved from week 1. And, I am picking this game, so I'm not going to get too much into details. But let's just say I am very heavily leaning towards one side, and it's not even close. The fact that it's only 2.5 points is absolutely disrespectful to Jaden Daniels and Louisiana State University. I do have them, because I'm not going to tell you what I'm picking, even though it's kind of obvious. We're picking that here in a little bit. But I need Jackson Dart to step up. If they want a chance to win, he needs to run the ball. He's their leading rusher. And if Judkins isn't going to step up, Jackson Dart needs to. 1,096 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They need to start controlling the clock a little bit better and keep the ball out of Jaden Daniels' hands. Like I said, I won't go into too much because I am picking this one.
I will say the one thing that we aren't really touching on here is, as bad as Ole Miss looked, LSU almost had the red X through them from last week. It took a walk-off field goal for them to beat Arkansas at home. I think Arkansas is a team that has shown you so far who they are this season. I don't think they're that good of a football team. And, LSU struggled defensively. Malik Neighbors, he had a great game. That is who's going to be their bread and butter for that team. Jaden Daniels didn't look bad either. And Brian Thomas came alive too in that LSU receiving core. But I think Ole Miss is going to be able to have success on that LSU defense. If KJ Jefferson can throw for 3 touchdowns in that one, I think Lane Kiffin has to take the training wheels off Jackson Dart and, let him try to throw the ball over the yard against that LSU team. LSU does have a good pass rush. I will give them credit there. They were able to get to KJ Jefferson, and they were able to force a couple of turnovers as well in that game. But I think this is a game that's going to come down most likely to last possession. I do think LSU is the better football team here, and I think they have the better situation. I like Jaden Daniels. I think, he's the better quarterback at this point. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if Ole Miss somehow won this game. They looked absolutely terrible against Bama, but the way LSU looked against Arkansas gives me a little cause to pause. I'm taking LSU here. I do think LSU ultimately covers, but I think this is a one-possession ball game all day long.
I like it. I definitely think it's a one-possession game. I agree with that too. I don't think LSU is going to go ahead and blow their doors off, but I think the Arkansas game was a little bit of a sleepwalk, a little bit caught, kind of looking ahead to going to Ole Miss. That being said, I'll kind of echo what Cottrell said. I won't be surprised if a Brian Kelly team loses a big game. So we'll see what happens. Going to head up to the Northwest a little bit, more into the middle of the country. Alex, this is another one of your teams that you were a little bit higher on than other people. They're now ranked number 24 Kansas, traveling to number 3 Texas. Texas minus 16.5. Longhorns. Looking the part so far. Looking like the clear leaders in the Big 12. Quinn Ewers looking great. Xavier Worthy and company. Everybody around him. Defense has had a few lapses here and there. They struggled a little bit against Wyoming. I think as long as Texas shows up with their heads on straight here, I think they win. I think they just have too much offensively. I know Kansas is going to score points. They're going to throw the ball all over God's creation today. But I think Texas defense gets more than enough stops when they have to, and Quinn Ewers and company go to work. Kansas's defense is Swiss cheese. I don't know how else to say it. I think you have a big game. I think you have big games from both Quinn Ewers and Xavier Worthy today. lot of yardage, a lot of touchdowns. I like Texas here. I'll go to Cottrell next.
So, I mean, I think for me, this is a game where I think Texas should handle business handily. The one thing that I will say to kind of keep an eye on is that Kansas is a team that knows what it takes to go beat that Texas team. You know, you saw it a couple years ago. They went into Austin, they took care of business. We talked about Jaden Daniels in the last game. They got their own Daniels that takes care of business at the quarterback position. Jalen Daniels is nothing to sneeze at. And I think that he's a guy that can put up points against that Texas defense. Now, I do think the one key matchup in this one is for Kansas, their cornerback, Kobe Bryant, going up against Xavier Worthy. I think that's going to be the matchup of the day. If Xavier Worthy is able to beat that coverage and still find ways to get open, I don't think Kansas stands a chance in this one. I think Texas could be able to score 40 points easily. But I will say, I think Kansas is going to keep this game a little bit closer than a lot of people are expecting. As much as it is a ranked v ranked matchup, and it is that 4-0 against 4-0, and they are in the same conference. Next week is the Red River rivalry, and I think Texas could potentially get caught looking ahead here. So, with the spread being as high as it is at 15 points. I think there's a chance that Kansas can shock some people, keep this game close, and make Texas really work for it. So I got Texas winning, but I think Kansas covers, and I think we got a game this afternoon.
Yeah, man. I mean, I yesterday or 2 days ago, I was looking at this game. The line was at 16.5. All right, for in favor of Texas. I actually had Kansas as my super dog pick. But now the line has dropped below that 16 points. We'll mix it up a little bit, but that's all right. For me, Kansas is going to come in here. They're the underdogs. They're two possession underdogs. They are 4-0 and going to Texas, another 4-0, number 3 ranked team in the country. And I'm sorry, but as an athlete and anyone who's played sports knows, if you're going into an opposing team stadium or field or whatever sport it is, and you're underdogs like this, but you're undefeated and you feel disrespected, there is nothing holding you back. Kansas is going to go absolutely crazy in this game. They're going to score over 35 points against Texas's defense. And I also have Texas, of course, going off as well, also scoring over 30. I have this game coming down to the fourth quarter, one possession game. I actually have Kansas winning over Texas 38-35. And Jalen Daniels is going to be the difference today. If you look at Jalen Daniels' numbers from last year, Kansas's defense was absolutely terrible, and that's the reason that they lost most of their games. They averaged over, 34 points per game last year, and they're picking up right where they left off last year. Jalen Daniels himself, he's already improved his completion percentage, going from, 62% last year to 75% this year. So dude is making better decisions, passing the ball around. Kansas's defense has forced 6 interceptions and has 19 passes deflected. Their secondary is going to come up huge today against Quinn Ewers. And like you said earlier, Cottrell, this is a huge letdown game for Texas. I was so happy that Kansas showed up in the polls this week, but I was hoping that they wouldn't, so that this would be even bigger upset. But that's what I have. I have Kansas actually coming out and winning this game against Texas.
That will be the biggest upset of the year so far. So you got me, who thinks Texas wins, probably doesn't cover, a little bit comfortable. Cottrell thinks it's a little bit closer because of the look ahead, and Alex just has him flat out losing. So curious to watch that game today. I believe it's a 3:30 game.
It is indeed.
It's the afternoon kick. Last but certainly not least, the main event game tonight. The hotbed of college football this week will be in Durham, North Carolina. I don't know if we've ever been able to say that before. Duke hosts Notre Dame. Notre Dame coming off a heartbreaker against Ohio State, fighting for their season tonight. Duke 4-0, big win over Clemson to start the year, to start the season with a shock upset. 17 returning senior starters from Mike Elko and company. 17 senior starters for Duke against Sam Hartman, that offense, Team A. I'm picking this game as well. I think this is a very big opportunity for Marcus Freeman to rebound, show these kids they still have a chance, that their season is in front of them. Mike Elko has a chance for the second time in 5 weeks to shock the college football world, potentially make himself a lot of money, and really shake things up. Notre Dame, as the visiting team, 5.5-point favorite. No love for Duke. No respect for Duke. What do you guys think?
Take it away, Alex.
Sorry, you cut out there. What was that last thing you said?
Which part?
I missed the last thing you said.
I said Duke is a plus 5.5-point home underdog against Notre Dame team. Alex, what do you got? What do you see?
I mean, this game comes down to Riley Leonard, realistically. In 2 of the games, he has over 200 rushing yards this year, but in 2 games this year, he has just under 100 with 98 each of 2 games against Clemson and I believe against Northwestern. If Duke is going to win this game, Riley Leonard needs to use his legs. He needs to get close to that, between 75 and 100 yards rushing, break out of the pocket. Notre Dame has done a great job of keeping the QBs contained and not allowing them to get out of the pocket. They need to do that today. And Riley Leonard needs to use his legs to get out of the pocket and kind of make some things happen if Duke is going to have a chance to win this game. Duke only has 8 sacks on the season in 4 games, okay? Sam Hartman is too experienced of a quarterback. You have to apply pressure to enable for him to make bad decisions, throw the ball away, force long third downs. I do think that Notre Dame, with Sam Hartman's too experienced, they're coming off of that heartbreaking loss to Ohio State. I think they realize what's on the line here, where one more loss eliminates them entirely. And Sam Hartman does not want to go out with 2 losses on this Notre Dame team. I do have Notre Dame covering. I do think it's going to be more like a 28-21 game. Have it being more low scoring, being at Duke. But I do have Notre Dame coming out, taking care of business, and Sam Hartman putting up Sam Hartman numbers.
So I think this is the first game where Duke is actually going to feel some pressure on their shoulders. For the beginning half of this season, at least so far, they've really been everyone's, feel good story. They're sweethearts. They kind of took everybody, by storm in a sense this year by beating Clemson week 1. I think this game, you have game day down there with ESPN. They've seen all the attention that they're getting on campus, and this is their one true big test. I want to see how Duke responds to this. For Notre Dame, they know what's at stake here. They know what their season's on the line, and that with a loss here, that it's all over for them. Sam Hartman at this point, he knows that if he loses another game, he has no shot of going to the college football playoff. And so I'm expecting Notre Dame to come out with a little bit more of a sense of urgency here. I do think, Duke is going to have the opportunity to put up some points on the board. Their offense has been very consistent so far to this point. But I think Notre Dame is going to be a team that comes out on a mission. They know what it's like to play in that big game. They just played Ohio State last week. I do think they're going to take this game a little bit more personal. And I think for Duke, I think you might see some of their players, playing a little bit more tight. Maybe the quarterback, overthrows a couple passes earlier on to start just because the nerves are so high. And, maybe you see a guy take his eyes off the ball, big third down play, and the ball goes right through his hands. I think Duke's going to play a little bit more tight, and I think Notre Dame's going to take advantage of that. I got Notre Dame winning. I think this will be, a little bit more of a higher scoring game for Notre Dame. I think this one can end up being 31-17, 31-14. I think Notre Dame stays in control of this ball game, and they try to make a point to get back in that top 10.
All right. Well, let's not waste any more time. We're actually kind of on time here. So we have last segment of the show, NCAA Pick'em. I'm not going to toot my own horn here, but I mean,
got some ground to make up for sure.
But I'm winning. I will. I'm gonna let Mr. Left Coast start this week. We'll go Black Elmore. We'll go College Control, and then we will go myself.
All right. So I'll start off first. We kind of just talked about the Kansas-Texas game. I have Kansas covering at plus. They were plus 16. Now they're plus 15. So I have Kansas covering the 16-point spread. against Texas in Texas. Ole Miss versus LSU. Jaden Daniels and LSU has been the hottest defense minus Washington State, or hottest offense in the country minus Washington State, arguably. Only 2.5 points favorites after Ole Miss lost by 14 to a far inferior Alabama team, which I consider inferior to LSU's comparison by what I'm saying. So I have LSU minus 2.5 over Ole Miss. I have that game more closer. I feel comfortable taking that line up to 9.5. In fact, so in case you're feeling like a little bit of an extra gamble, I would take LSU at minus 9.5 on this game. Jesus. And then I also have a team we haven't really talked about this year, and I can't wait till next week when they play Ohio State. But I have Maryland over Indiana at minus 14.5 points. I have Maryland offense. They better be ranked next week after this win today. They got the number one offense in the Big Ten statistically. Penn State, I think, has the number one scoring offense, but Maryland's number one statistically as far as passing yards and rushing yards per game. My third pick today is going to be Wyoming over New Mexico. It's a 14-point spread, so I got Wyoming minus 14. I think Wyoming has been a fantastic team this year, pushing Texas to the brink, beating Texas Tech. I think Wyoming is going to go out and show out against New Mexico today, which is one of the probably 25 worst programs in the country this season. And then last but not least, I don't think this is too big of a stretch. I do have Colorado covering 21.5 point underdogs to USC today. I have Colorado coming out on fire, looking fantastic, scoring over 30 points today and keeping that game somewhat close into the fourth quarter.
All right, so I got my games next here. First game, I got one that's going to confuse, some people if you know what's going on with the program. First game I got is Texas A&M minus 6 traveling to Arkansas. I know Connor Wegman's not going to be the quarterback at A&M anymore. I know he broke his foot, and Max Johnson's going to be their starting quarterback. Max Johnson looked very poised last week, coming in and taking over for Connor. And I do think Texas A&M has their receiving core is very sneaky good. I said it on Wire to Wire. I think they have a top 10 receiving core in the country. And so I think Max Johnson will be able to go into Arkansas and take care of business. The one thing with that Razorbacks team is that KJ Jefferson's prone to turn the ball over. And I think against A&M, if you turn the ball over, once or twice in that game, I think their offense is potent enough to put up points. And I do think that defense will be able to slow down that Razorback attack. So I do like Texas A&M covering that 6 points there. Michigan at Nebraska. I think Michigan's going to win that game pretty handily, but I actually like the over in that one. It's at 39.5 right now. I think the way that Michigan's offense has looked so far, especially with this being, a game where Jim Harbaugh will be on the sidelines for them again, I think they will try to put up points on the board, with this being his second game back on the sidelines. So I think JJ is going to have a big game in this one. I think there's a really good chance that Michigan themselves score 35 points. And I think on the flip side of things, Michigan's defense has actually looked very good, but there's been one consistent thing in a lot of the games that have been happening. They have been susceptible to the one big play. And I think Nebraska is going to be able to get that, whether it be a big-time run or a big-time pass where they put up, 7 points or they go down, kick a couple field goals. And so I think that one goes over that 39.5 mark. Last game I got South Carolina covering 12.5, traveling to Tennessee. I think Spencer Rattler is a big-time player. He performs in those big-time games. And I think for Spencer Rattler, he knows that, this is an opportunity to go up against another ranked opponent on the road to really, essentially just boost that draft stock. We saw it last year. South Carolina took care of business against Tennessee. And, I know Hendon Hooker ultimately got hurt in that game, but that was a game where they had Hendon and Tennessee was essentially on top of the world at that point. So I do think Spencer Rattler and company will keep that game close and keep it within 12.5. And then similar to Alex, for my super dog, I have Colorado as well covering that 21.5. Made no bones about it. I told you guys I thought this game would be close. And I think this is going to be a week where I finally pick up some more super dog points. So those are my picks for the week.
All right, here we go. I'm going to start out in the Big 12. I'm going to take Oklahoma minus 19.5 at home against Iowa State. Nobody from the state of Iowa can score touchdowns. Have it be Iowa State. I don't know what other football teams in that state. They probably can't score either. I'm going Oklahoma to cover big at home in Norman against Iowa State. Iowa State is not a good football team. They've struggled all year. I know Oklahoma has Texas next week. I think they're in a little bit of the opposite situation that Texas is, though. I don't think they're going to get caught peeking ahead. So I like Oklahoma to take care of business at home today against Iowa State. My second game, I'm gonna go to the MAC, little MACtion. I got Toledo, Quan Finn at home against Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois is not a good football team. Toledo's offense has been putting up 40 on everybody they've played. They can run the ball, they can pass the ball. High octane offense, not the best defense, but they run up and down the field and score. They can score quick. They score in bunches. Pretty much have an opportunistic defense. They jump a lot of routes, try to get picks, but Northern Illinois' offense, I don't think has enough to stay in that game. I will take Toledo minus 13.5 at home. My last game we already previewed, Notre Dame at Duke. Notre Dame minus 5.5. I'm taking them. I think their season's on the line. I think they know that. To Cottrell's point as well, I don't think a lot of those Duke players, Riley Leonard, all those guys, as good as they are, I don't think they've never had game day there. They've never had all the eyes of the country watching them and see what they're going to do. They were the underdog in the Clemson game. They weren't supposed to be in that game at all. They went to Clemson, stole a game. I think the roles are reversed here. I think everybody's waiting for them to have a good game, possibly beat Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's experience, Sam Hartman, the team, I think they run the ball a lot tonight. I think they bully Duke a little bit. I think they slow down the game, put up points. I think Duke probably scores late to put it out of reach. I think Duke somewhere in the neighborhood of 31-17, 33-20, something like that. I'll take Duke I'll take Notre Dame, minus 5.5 to cover it. And my super dog, we're all on the same page. I think we get a way better effort out of Colorado this week. I like Colorado to come out, play tough at home. 21 points is a lot for a team like USC who doesn't play good defense. Cottrell brought up a really good point. This isn't Oregon at Oregon with Oregon's defense. This is USC on the road in a hostile environment with a defense that is leaky at best. I don't think Colorado is going to slow down USC whatsoever. I don't think USC is going to slow down Colorado that much. I think this is a shootout. I think USC wins the game. 21 is a lot. So I will go with Colorado to pick me up a few extra Superdog points and continue to add to my tally, hopefully. So those are my picks for the week. So that is week 6 in the books. We are on time. I'm impressed with as much as we had to go over this week. So thank you guys. And while I'm on that topic, listen, for people who've never done a podcast, I will say this. It's more time consuming than you think. Time to prep, time to think about what you want to say. And I will say this, like I by far have the easiest job on this show. I get to say what I want to say, but I just hand it over to these two knowledgeable guys and let them talk. Cottrell does all of our graphics. Alex has a new idea to something to add to the show every week. I just want to tell you both that I'm thankful that we have this. I'm happy about it. I love doing it with you guys. I'm thankful for all the effort and the time that you guys dedicate to it, to make it look the way it looks, to make it sound the way it sounds, for it to be so informative and knowledgeable. I appreciate your effort. I appreciate your time. So I'm going to leave it like that for week 6. Another great show, guys. Starting to get a lot of feedback. I love it. I love where we're going. Another great day of college football coming up. Everybody's got 4 minutes to go take a piss, sit down with a drink, get ready for the 12 o'clock kickoffs. Alex, have a great day with your son. Happy birthday again to the little man. Hope you guys have a great day.
For sure.
And
one thing I did want to add here before we the close out there, and I wanted to get the video for it. Ultimately didn't get it, but Henry Blackburn, kid that knocked out Travis Hunter from that Colorado game and was getting death threats, things like that. they got together on a podcast. Well, Travis Hunter's podcast that he does on YouTube. They talked it out. They're all on good terms. Travis Hunter basically said, it's a football play. Emotions were high. There are no hard feelings there. So I'm glad these kids were able to work that out, because that's something that could ultimately linger. Like, obviously, Henry had the death threats going to his family, things like that. Travis Hunter's in a situation where he's still not clear to play yet. So that could have really got out of hand there. So I'm glad those guys, for them to be 18, 19, 20 years old, handle that situation like true adults and get everybody on the same page. That's a big step, especially for those two teams that are, such fierce rivals. So was one cool thing to see this week as well.
It was. I did see that as well. I mean, that's just both of them showing, especially Hunter, just showing maturity, way beyond his years, to be able to look at it from that point of view and accept it and move on, and not let it be something that he dwells on all year. So good for him, good for both of them, honestly. And it was good to see. It's good to see that the kids were the adults in the room, because that's not always the case. So
yep,
that is it. Week 6. Alex, like I said, enjoy your day. Cottrell, I guess enjoy your day off. You got nothing to stress about today. And we'll see you guys bright and early next Saturday. Coast to coast.
Later.
We're out.
Take it easy, guys.